Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello and welcome everyone to the Luna Holistic Podcast. Today I have Angela Hogeveen with me. Say hi, Angela.
Hi, Geneva. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about the power of surrender and how to let go. Sort of a big topic, and it's been on the top of our minds lately. So we'll be chatting a bit about that. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Angela. I'm excited to get into it with you. But before we go there, we'll do our little tiny micro meditation, our collective breath of gratitude. So if you happen to be driving a vehicle, don't close your eyes, keep them open. But otherwise, I invite you to just gently close your eyes. Take a few deeper breaths into your body, letting the energy flow down through your body, through your legs and feet, and keep following that energy down right to the center of the earth. And just take another big sigh of relief. Noticing that center of the earth and that constant pressure of gravity holding you safely within that loving, caring energy. The earth carries us all of the time. And so just sending a deep feeling of gratitude for the planet that we are all connected to. Noticing the air flowing in and out of your lungs, feeling incredibly grateful for each breath. And that clear, fresh air, supported by all the trees and plants in your environment. Noticing the waters that might be flowing around where you're living. And just sending a big wave of gratitude for all of the living beings you share this planet with. And feel that wave of gratitude flowing back to you. As endless as the tides flowing in and out. Exhaling gratitude and inhaling gratitude. Wonderful. Thank you. You can gently open your eyes. Thanks for joining me there. Liked that one.
So good.
I like meditating in groups of people. I don't know about you, but I find it to be incredibly helpful, and it's kind of neat feeling the energy of everybody who's listening and who might be meditating along with us. It's like, oh, you can feel it. It's different, even though we're recording this at a separate time when people will be listening at different times. It's like we kind of all drop into this timeless, ever-present now in those little meditations. But yeah, how did that go for you?
So lovely.
Yeah.
Even though it is just a short little meditation, it's still powerful. So yeah, no, that was very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining me today.
Of course.
So today we've got this hot topic of surrender. Oof. It's like it can be really, really loaded. But we both, I would think I can speak for you, but I'll let you speak for you. I think we can both agree that surrender is at times difficult, but is truly like the secret sauce. It's where you can really, really connect to this power and transformative change and a lot of growth and all kinds of good stuff on the other side of surrender or letting go, which sounds like a terrible, terrible idea to the ego. I've got some ideas about what surrender means for me. When we say the surrender word, what does that mean for you? What does it look like in your practice?
Yes, I agree. The ego does not like surrender. And I think generally when you hear that word, it relates to a negative, like when you're fighting with someone or you're in war and you surrender, it is like you're the losing side. So it could have a very negative connotation around the word. But to me, surrender is basically radical acceptance, that you surrender into a situation rather than fighting it. Well, I don't want to be here. I don't like where I'm at. So you fight it and you push against it. And you can, you know, definitely get into that pity party. Like, why am I here? And this isn't fair. But when you have that radical surrender, that radical acceptance, and you surrender into it, you stop all of the fighting against it. And you just, as I say, you accept it. I'm like, oh, okay, yes, I'm here. I'm going to stop with the pity party. I'm going to stop the fighting of it. And then once you surrender into it, you can then start to change the situation, but change it in a more positive way because you're coming from a more positive place rather than the fighting against it and trying to change. When you're fighting against it, it's difficult to win in that situation. It's difficult to make that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And the image that comes up for me when you talk about that is like, imagine falling off the back of a boat and you're now in the ocean and you're panicked. So you're flailing all of your limbs, splashing water everywhere. And if you keep doing that, you're going to drown. And so like the first thing is to stop and remember that you float, so it's like
right, yeah.
surrender into your own buoyancy, that you've got a force within you that is lifting and that is going to keep you at least still, And so it's like the first step is to like let go and surrender and just come to stillness and float. But then there's also this like image of, really digging this metaphor right now. There's this image of that, that what you're in, the ocean moves. It's got currents, it's got winds, and it's impossible to stay stationary in this living force that's always moving. So like the universe itself is this, I feel, is this web of interconnected consciousness, that there's a field of energy that runs through all matter, and everything is completely connected from the moment of the Big Bang until now. And when we let go into that bigger field of awareness, it's moving. It's not stationary. It's not static. And so sometimes you get further by floating than flailing. And it's like discerning whether your efforts are more like flailing or more like swimming. It's like, but you can't start swimming unless you trust that you can float. Then you can start like directing your path and getting yourself from where you are. You can put your efforts towards things that are actually going to get you to safety or a better place or just, sanity, instead of, because sometimes it's like most of the suffering, in Buddhism, they talk about like the suffering of suffering, right? Like you've had your leg chopped off. That's pretty much suffering. right? Like there's pain there, there's emotional pain, there's trauma. And then there's the suffering of the mind, which is the part that where we create suffering by our thoughts. And it's sort of like the mental or psychic flailing. And when we let go, the energy within us or the wisdom within us is going to start floating us towards better places. But that's what I kind of got. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and absolutely. But I think the key is when you surrender, that doesn't mean you allow yourself to drown. It's not totally giving up and just saying, that's it, I'm done. It is, so there is definitely a difference. So yeah, but as you know, as you said, it's that becoming still and then going with the flow, going with the waves and just floating and
yeah. And that, yeah, like it brings me back to that, like the point we were talking about before we hopped on the call, which was this difference. There's a difference between like letting go and giving in, and so when we're talking about surrender here, what we're really talking about is letting go, not just to the forces of chaos or letting go to shame. That would be, I would think, giving in, and giving in to the suffering of the mind rather than letting go of the suffering of the mind, letting go of ruminating thoughts or our attachment to things, that we're clinging and grasping, or like, what is it, like, aversion and clinging are these sort of two forces. We're either like pushing away or we're just sort of, there's a struggle there. And that when you let go of that struggle with awareness of what you're letting go into, which is letting go into peace or letting go into that trust within yourself, like just trusting your skills, that when you show up on the day of whatever big event, that you're going to have the skills that you need to carry you through. One of the ideas I like is like, it's better to know math than the answer, right? It's like, you don't need the number. If you have the one number, that's only going to be right one time. But if you know the process and skill of math, if you know the formula, then that will get you really far. And so it's trusting that, like, you've spent your whole life developing all of these skills that are survival skills and healthy coping skills. It's like you can do it when you get there. So yeah, I like that.
Absolutely. And then rather using your energy and occupying your mind with, again, being in that pity party and trying to fight against it, you can use your energy for moving forward. Once you surrender and accept where you are, or you accept what the thing is, whatever that thing is, then you can use your power to, okay, how do I move forward with this? Or move past it, or whatever it is. You can, you quiet all of the negative and you kind of turn to the positive. Even though it might not be a positive situation because you're not happy with the situation, but if you can, again, surrender, then you are able to focus on either finding the positives in the situation or moving out of the situation, or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it brings you into that sort of, like you had mentioned, like peace of mind. It drops you out of that anxious mind. It puts you into the state of harmony, or mindfulness. Like, even if you don't ever have to like where you are, but it's kind of a guarantee that you have to accept where you are, right? Like, here I am, like, just like if you were, when you see those maps in different public places and they have the little indicator, you are here. I don't know if you've ever been to a place where they don't have the "you are here," arrow. It's not as helpful. And that you need that sort of orientation to, where am I right now? What's happening right now? What do I know absolutely for sure right now? there is a lot of like, sometimes we cling and get into sort of a state of control when we're faced with a lot of uncertainty. And that's sort of where it can be hard to surrender, is because it's like it might feel like the things that are coming up are big and scary and unknown. That might be the case, right? Like you might be facing something really big in your life, and a lot of it might feel out of your control. But when life has put you in a place where things are intense and a lot of things are out of your hands, trying to grab on and pull them back into your hands tends to not work very well. I find that surrendering and getting to a place of acceptance of what you know, and refraining from filling in that question mark. That's another way I can think of it, as like, when I'm surrendering the outcome. So anything that is unknown, as best as possible, I try to leave it as a question mark and not fill in the blank with something. So it's like the surrendering the future, or surrendering the outcome, letting it go to, for me, one of the things that helps me is letting go to sort of this idea of a positive, loving being of the universe. Everybody has their own connection, their, sense of their place in the world and their spiritual connection with something greater. Some people might call it a higher power or God or Mother Earth, or, just something bigger than you that is loving and kind, and letting it go to the orderliness of that. And know that when you surrender the things that are beyond your control, then you're much more likely to be in a receptive state to get answers back. And for me, when I surrender things to the universe, what I get back is never like, here's the next 128 steps from where you are to where you want to go. It will say, do this next, do this next. This is the next step. From here, where you are, now go do this. It pulls you back into presence, and it pulls you back into being, that sort of yin, open, receptive state. And then you can start flowing, and everything gets a lot easier. So,
yeah, the ego wants control. And, surrender, or that radical acceptance, often to me feels counterintuitive. It doesn't feel right. Because, I'm holding on so tightly to whatever, and it's a trust fall. Surrender is a trust fall into the universe, or again, whatever, into God, the divine, the universe, whatever, however you want to phrase it, or whatever your beliefs are. But that's what it definitely feels like to me, is letting go of holding on so tightly and just doing that trust fall. I quickly shared with you earlier about when my dad passed away. I had to fly home, and I was already sick a little bit. I had a bit of a cold when I flew home, and then I just got so sick. I had, an ear infection in one ear, and then I was on antibiotics, and then rather than getting better, I got an ear infection in the other ear. I saw the doctor probably 4 times in 2 weeks. She couldn't understand why I wasn't getting better, because I was getting worse. Well, I was dealing with, the death of my dad, but then I also was in just having such a big pity party, just really feeling sorry for myself. And then I was staying with my sister, and a girlfriend said, just come for dinner, just come out, you might feel better. So I was borrowing my sister's car, and as I was driving out of her garage, as I was watching it, I hit the garage door with the passenger side mirror. The mirror fell off.
Oh, no.
And that's when I drove back in, went inside, and just literally said, I give up. And I had a meltdown. I was crying, kind of like scream crying into the pillow, but saying,
as you do,
as you
need to.
And it wasn't even a conscious, I surrender. It was, I just couldn't anymore. And so when I
Mm-hmm.
said, I give up, I woke up the next day. I felt so much better, just physically, emotionally, mentally. And that for me was what really did it for me in regards to, oh, I need to surrender. Even though, again, it did feel a little counterintuitive to just give up and give in. But it's what turned things around for me. Is very powerful. It's a very powerful experience.
And there's just so many of those incidents. For me, it's like surrender is great when things are going great, but it's harder when things are kind of like these compounding things, one on top of the other. It's like any one of those things would be enough and fine. Thank you very much. But then all of them together kind of brings us into a state of overwhelm. And and then in that softness or gentleness of letting go, you access this sort of greater space and awareness where all the energy that's trying to get in to soothe, to support, to heal, now at least it can get in because like your hands are open, you know. And then there's also a little bit of like, yep, here I am. I'm in this state and it sucks. When somebody important dies, it sucks and it's going to suck for a while. And it just is, you know. And when we embrace that and let go into it, what I find, especially with big things like grief, it's like I'm a pretty optimistic person the best of times, but I really do feel like things like grief is like, why is it there? It's because you care, right? It's like because you grieve the people the most that you care the most about. And giving yourself that space to feel the pain, that there's an ocean of love underneath it. Then what you feel is that soothing balm of that care, that love, those good memories, the joy that's there. And then another wave of pain comes up where you're like, ugh. But in trying to struggle away from our pain and discomfort, it just chases us. It's like we can try to numb it. We can try to avoid it. We can try to distract ourselves from it. But it's just going to be like a hound at your heels until you just sit with it. And then everything can get really, really still. And in that stillness, you can connect to these moments of grace and these moments of wisdom, and that sort of kind, restful voice inside of you can sort of whisper to you because it's subtle and it's often a much quieter voice than the voice of our ego. The ego is loud and it's brash and it needs to know what's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it freaks out. And then when we can kind of silence that part and go into this peaceful present moment, then the voice of our wise self can be heard. And that's the part that no matter how difficult things are, it has this wisdom to give you. And when you let go, I find that connection gets stronger. Your intuition goes way up. You are often, even in the midst of the worst day, you're finding things to find gratitude and joy in. You can start embracing life as it is rather than trying to change everything and just slap a giant happy sticker over top of things of the pile of rubble. It's like, no, you can be in the muck and it can be okay. And when you soften, then this sort of loving, wise inner being inside you, but then also the forces of the universe start conspiring to bring you different kinds of things. And then things start changing. So it can be really, really powerful and profound. I find like when I struggle or let my, it's like it's the ego mind is just gets really, really bent out of shape about things. And that when I try to follow or do things that are going to soothe what my mind thinks, it always goes really terribly for me. When I surrender and I ask sort of that higher power, that wisdom inside of me, what to do, it always works out the best. It always works out the best. So I'm like, well, why would I ever, take advice from the part of me that knows the least about what's going to happen instead of turning into that kind place? But a lot of it is that, the letting go and surrendering to that greater force. So,
and well, for me anyway, it often feels counterintuitive. When you have these big feelings that are not nice, that are painful, we push against it because why would you want to feel that? Why would you want to feel all that grief? Like, with my example, with my dad, I don't want to feel that. So you push away and push it down because that's just intuitively, when something is scary or something that you don't want to deal with is coming towards you, you automatically push against it. But it absolutely is that, even though, again, it feels counterintuitive often, it is that surrender into it, and it is feeling all the big feels. But once you do feel them, like you said, then you're able to move through it and access grace, and just it really brings you to a really kind of loving place. It doesn't mean that you're not still sad. Again, I'm just using my example with grief. Like, the grief is still there, but when you allow it to come in, you are then able to, like you said, almost find the positives. It's not that there's positives, but you're able to find the love in the grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it connects you to something greater, I find.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the pain all of a sudden magically vanishes.
Not at all.
But I think it's like when we take our feelings out of pressure. So if there's a feeling we don't want to feel, and then we clamp down around it, now we have the feeling plus all the pressure that we've put around it. I have this feeling, I don't like it. I'm just going to put it in the pressure cooker, right? And it's until it explodes, until no more things can be placed in, and then it all just falls apart.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So then a lot of it is that surrender is taking the pressure off. It's here I am, I'm having a sad day, and I'll just be sad rather than trying to run from it. And then I can mindfully do things that are going to, reach out for support and get the care I need, and do gentle things that are going to help, embrace and accept where I am, rather than trying to pretend that you're not where you are. Yeah. Brilliant. I think we've covered a huge part of it. I love all of these things. Tools that help you surrender. So part of it sounds like it's a big, it's like you talk to yourself, and you actually just make this choice of okay, I'm letting go. And it's almost like you're doing a little inner counseling to the parts of you. Is that your go-to move?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Even this morning, I started ruminating on, I don't even know what it was, but it was starting to create some anxiety, and I could feel myself going in this downward spiral. So, I mean, you do have to be very self-aware and be aware of what you're thinking. And then I do have, I give myself a pep talk, which is really, think back in my life and all of these situations that I didn't think I would, get through or work through. I've gotten through all of them, and some of them were really big, painful experiences. And I've lived all these years, and everything's always worked out. Maybe not, they haven't worked out the way I imagined they would work out, but they absolutely have worked out. So why wouldn't my current situation work out? If I was to base it on history, well, it will work out because it's always worked out. And then it is just a decision, like, okay, and it is that letting go, like, okay, you know what? This is going to work out. It's going to be okay. Maybe, yeah, I'm not happy with where I am, or I'm not happy with the situation, but just do that trust fall and have that knowing that it's going to be okay and it's going to work out. Again, it might not look the way I want it to look, but it's still going to be okay. And I'm safe, and
Yeah.
and life goes on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I sometimes can do that, but often I find like if I try to use my mind to counteract my mind, I just end up with more mind squared, because it's always got a clever but coming back at me. And I'm like, oh, I can't quite argue with myself very well. So for me, what helps is knowing where I want to get to, knowing that I want to be in that state of surrender and I want to be in that state of acceptance. So setting that sort of as an intention in Reiki, and then receiving, usually if I'm in a state, I'll receive a session from someone. But self-healing works great too. And sometimes meditation is also really great. And it's almost like I go to the place, to the frequency that I am surrendering all the stuff I'm worried about into. So for me, I connect to that sort of universal oneness through Reiki really well, or through meditation or journaling. But most of the time, I get the biggest benefit. And it's amazing to me, like, when we did our little meditation at the beginning, it's amazing to me how quickly you can turn things almost just right on a dime, that within a few minutes of meditation, I'm in a different state. I'm calmer, and then I'm just somehow trust. And I don't go through the mind at all to get to that state of trust, because the mind doesn't want to let go. At least my mind doesn't. So I just sort of don't use it or consult it in the process. But once I'm in that state of acceptance, then I find my mind is quite an obedient little foot soldier. And so it'd be like, oh, we're accepting now? Okay, I will accept. But it's almost like I have to like completely shift gears, go into a different mental state, kind of like shifting into neutral. Sometimes mindfulness is really great, like mindfulness meditation techniques, or just breathing, or just sort of focusing on the next 5 minutes. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm just going to do life 5 minutes at a time. And I'm going to completely surrender to my own skills and to my knowledge and my own capability, and that there's a loving force in the universe that's looking out for me, and I can navigate at least the next 5 minutes. And when something new happens, then I will meet it then and not a second before. So not pre-living life, but being where your feet are. That's a big piece for me. One of the visualizations that I've been using a lot in Reiki, as an intro, sort of, I like to do a little guided meditation for people when they like do Reiki, even just to do like those big sighs of relief. Because when you can kind of practice that state of surrender, when everything has worked out, you are going to breathe in a particular pattern. And it's usually a big sigh of relief, like setting down 1,000-pound backpack. And you'll just go, oh, okay, it's fine. I can do this, So like you can do that, but then also this visualization of imagine the universe itself can reach out its hands to you. And I always see them as like these space hands, like the fabric of space and time in the shape of hands. These giant, giant hands are reaching out, and into those hands, you can place all your worries, all your concerns, any memories, any thoughts on a loop, anything that is distressing, big, overwhelming. There's nothing too big. There's nothing too small. You just place it in that divine, orderly energy of the universe. So the same force that keeps all the planets spinning and the trees growing and the tides going on time, like all of that energy can handle whatever you place in those hands. And then just practice that feeling of letting all of that go to a very, very safe, loving space. And then everything you drop in those hands, you just take a big breath of relief. And if your mind wanders, when it wanders, you just come back to your breath, a big sigh of relief, and let go of another thing. Because all that's happened is your mind is like, oh, we're getting rid of the things we don't want. Great. I found 5 more. It'll like, your ego will scurry around your consciousness going like, I found a little bit of garbage. Do you want to get rid of that? Yeah, I want to get rid of that garbage thought. Great. We'll place that in the hands of the universe. You can place not good enough. You can place, what's going to happen. You can place like memories, anything, just big stuff, little stuff, anything beyond this moment, placing it all in that divine care. And then if you need it back later, you can have it back. But just for right now, just giving yourself a break from it. And then what's neat is that when you do that, it's like you need a surprising little amount of it back. And it's usually like, what's next? It's not all of the 15,000 things that are overloading. So I like that one.
Mm-hmm. And mindfulness is absolutely huge because often, well, for me anyway, anxiety is, looking into the future and what if this happens and I'm going to feel this way and oh no, this is going to happen. And really, we have no idea what's going to happen. Anything could happen. So when you're able to, like you said, just take some breaths and focus on the breath and be present and be mindful. And then again, for me, it's like, okay, I almost give myself a shake, like, okay, you know what, shake it off. I'm here, I'm present, I'm safe. It's all okay. It's all okay. It's going to be okay. And it is okay.
Yeah. And then I think it's like, because it's, coming back to that, like, it's not logical to let go like that. It's like, but if you have a busy, overloaded mind, it means you can't respond to the actual real things that are happening in front of you that need your attention and awareness, or you're, avoiding those things or whatever. I find when we surrender and let go and get into that sort of radical acceptance, it brings us back into a state where you can respond to what is, not what you're imagining. And then you become more powerful because then your energy is directed in the right way at the right time. You're less likely to avoid or put off or delay important actions. And you're more likely to sort of take those little courageous baby steps. And, you can review and all of that. So, yeah. So great. I love it. I love all of these things. Thank you so much, Angela. I'm so glad you joined me today. Thanks so much. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Geneva.
Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic Podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.